Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So the UN Security Council finally passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, an immediate ceasefire during Ramadan in Gaza that would lead to a lasting ceasefire. Now the word lasting proved to be a very significant and important word when it came to the wording of the resolution, because it was initially planned to go out as permanent ceasefire. But then when the draft included the word permanent, the US rejected. They asked it to be lasting. The Russians wanted to be permanent because it had other meanings, obviously, whereas the US wanted to be a lasting ceasefire. Finally, we reached an agreement that the US and the other countries will let it pass, the US by abstaining, other countries supporting it, all of them. So what does that exactly mean? Well, for the first time, we have a massive shift in the position of the US. It's a very dramatic and massive shift. They previously had multiple resolutions that they vetoed. The proposal that they came up with linked the ceasefire with the release of the Israeli prisoners. And this resolution that did not include the release of the Israeli prisoners was not vetoed by the US. Russia, they criticized the US because the United States had a problem with this resolution because it did not condemn Hamas. They wanted to add an initial condemnation, add it to an amendment, but most of the other countries said that won't pass. We won't have a condemnation of the Palestinians. The Russian ambassador told them you had the opportunity to condemn Hamas when Brazil proposed a call for an immediate ceasefire back in October. They condemned the Hamas attacks and they called for an immediate ceasefire, not with the proposals by the Russians, by the way. So at the moment, we're seeing a significant shift in the United States, and this was received with harsh criticisms from Israel. Some people said that we need to continue our relationship with the US as it is. Others criticized the US heavily, including Bezalel Smotrich. He said that this resolution is supporting the Hamas and we need to continue the war with full force, because it led to Netanyahu canceling a trip to Washington. He canceled the delegation trip to Washington because to him this is a significant shift from the US consistent position when it comes to the ceasefire. A significant shift from the US, and clearly also an implementation of the threats and leverage they were talking about, particularly Chuck Schumer when he had his speech and threatened to use leverage against Israel to secure the US interests in the Middle East. We also had threats from Blinken as well, clear threats for Israel that your position internationally is at risk and you're making yourself more secluded. Following Bibi's cancellation, again, many people in Israel, they criticized him. So what are you doing? You can't cancel a trip to the US. And from the United States perspective, some of them were surprised because to them, it was non-binding. Now, this is the key point here. So we had the resolution. It's calling for an immediate ceasefire. And all UN Security Council resolutions are legally binding, but not according to the United States and Israel. The US and Israel say it's non-binding. As a matter of fact, John Kirby said he was surprised by Israel's reaction, seeing as the nature of the resolution is non-binding, but every resolution that comes out of the UN Security Council is legally binding. So what's going to happen? Well, it's not just going to take the US and Israel. It's going to be up to the other members of the UN Security Council to enforce and ensure an enforcement when it comes to the resolution of the UN Security Council. Because if they weren't to go ahead with any enforcement when it comes to either Israel, although we're only talking about a matter of 2 weeks, and we're going to be ending with Ramadan really, and it's very vague, the word lasting, that can lead to lasting and sustainable ceasefire, obviously not permanent, that Russia wanted, but it would very much depend on the other countries apart from the US in the UN Security Council. But this is a very dramatic move from the US, clearly signaling a shift from the traditional position of Israel, and it's showing growing discontent and distrust between the Israeli government and the American government. That's not to say that the strategic partnership is breaking. No, they're still strategically allied. US has it to the core to support Israel. It's very much a US to them, to the administration. It's very important to strategically remain tied with Israel, but clearly both of the governments are not seeing eye to eye, and this is the most dramatic move from the United States, at least visibly so far, during this genocide. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is Gaza. So today, Al-Qassam Brigades, the armed wing of the Hamas, they launched missiles from Gaza on Sdud. So they used, most likely, they didn't say where they launched the missiles from, but they weren't from the most northern part of Gaza, from the reports that we've heard. Obviously, they're very secretive about which parts they launched them from, because that would expose them to the IOF forces in Gaza. However, most likely when they target Sdud, which is in the southern part of Israel to the south of Tel Aviv, they usually use a 40-kilometer range missiles. So quite mid-range from Hamas. Obviously, their longest ranging missiles is the A250, Ayash 250, 250 kilometers. But this one is still a significant distance from Gaza. And Sdud is a very strategic city. It has the second largest port and the second most important port in Israel after the port of Haifa. And it has many factories. It's an industrial city, and it's very much strategic when it comes to electricity, energy, factories, industrial, etc. Hamas is sending messages, obviously. They started with yesterday's launches, not Hamas particularly, but the Palestinian resistance, primarily the PIJ and the PFLP, particularly the armed wing of the PFLP, Abu Ali Mustafa Brigades and Sarai al-Quds, who are the armed wing of the PIJ. They launched missiles, but they launched them to areas that were closer to Gaza, the area that they call in Hebrew Otef Aza. Still significant, still sending messages, and today Hamas is showing them that we're not out of the picture. And yesterday when we spoke about the resistance capabilities in Gaza, I reiterated the fact that Israel is still constantly talking about the fact that they destroyed 20 Hamas brigades, despite the fact that you have these smaller resistance groups still acting at a massive level in Gaza. I mean, Kataib Abu Ali Mustafa, they're third or fourth in terms of strength. The PIJ are obviously strong, but not to the abilities of Hamas. And Hamas are still really targeting Israel all across of Gaza, alongside the other Palestinian resistance movements, again signaling strength, power, massive supply, massive production, and a very, very long breath and bravery from the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian people in Gaza. At the same time, we had another Al-Qassam Brigades action against Israeli occupation forces surrounding Al-Shifa. So Israel is still surrounding Al-Shifa hospital. It's not enough for them to occupy and mass execute and rape women and kill children in Al-Shifa, but they're still surrounding the whole area. Hamas released videos of them targeting 3 tanks surrounding Al-Shifa hospital with Yasin 105 missiles, successful hits. They destroyed all of them. And they also showed some sniper action for 3 Israeli commanders on a building next to Al-Shifa hospital, again signaling that they're targeting Israel wherever they touch in Gaza, and that the resistance is still strong and moving forward. And these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Take care.